My name is Thom Rayner, and this is the Church Answers podcast. Jess Rayner, my co-host, is on vacation, so I'm doing this solo. For those of you who have been a part of the Church Answers podcast family for some time, you know that I used to do this podcast solo all the time. In fact, that's the way we started off. We started off with very brief vignettes, and then we expanded it just a little bit. And now we've gotten in kind of a rhythm, a groove, and for those of you who've enjoyed Jess being a part of the podcast, you've told me under no circumstances should I ever take him off because it has improved immensely comparing to my presence and my insights or lack thereof. Look, he's on vacation. He's earned it. He's my pastor. He deserves it. And so I'm not going to try to make him feel guilty if he happens to listen or watch this podcast and know that his father who raised him, who provided for him, who is now a part of his church. I am not going to raise that issue at all, that he's totally abandoning me for a couple of weeks or a couple of podcasts, I should say. But I will get through it. I'll be able to get through it. And one thing I do want to mention, folks, we often, just kind of give the sponsorship and then we move on. I'm going to say something that I've said a few times in the past, but I'm going to say it now. We don't just get sponsors because we want financial support for these podcasts. Hear me well. We appreciate the financial support for the podcast, but we say no to a lot of sponsors because we want to make sure that whoever comes on to this podcast, that they are aligned with our mission and we are aligned with theirs. That's the case with Cheney & Associates. Cheney & Associates, we often refer to them as the accounting firm for the church. That is a good description. But you got to know that it's a lot more than just that. Steve Cheney and his team are the best accountants, bookkeepers for the church. They have decades of experience. They do church and church alone. They have over 1,100 churches that they serve. And they're going to give you financial insights into ministry that you're going to be surprised. It's not just keeping records. They are your partners in ministry. You need to take off the bookkeeping and finance hat of yourself, or maybe of a bookkeeper, or a volunteer, or even someone paid within the church, and give it to someone who knows their stuff. There's no such thing as a cost for Cheney. It's an investment. So go to Cheney & Associates. That's CheneyAssociates.com/Church Answers. If you're listening to this on a podcast and you see the show notes, you know that it is CheneyAssociates.com/Church Answers, or you can just note that down and visit them. The consultation is at no cost to you, and you may be surprised. I think you will be surprised at what a good partner they can be for your church in ministry. Okay, if you've been walking with us through these podcasts, you know very well that we have been talking about unforced errors. Now, what is an unforced error? I had to do a little research. It didn't take long to do a little research with Google and AI, but I did a little background on this, and here's what I found out. Unforced errors started off in the tennis world. I thought they started off in the baseball world. And that shows you that I did not really understand it. An unforced error means when you do something that causes you to lose a point, but it is not the opposition's fault. It's your own fault. For example, you serve the ball on the tennis court, and for whatever reason, you hit it on the top of the racket instead of in the net itself, and the ball goes askew. That's an unforced error. Or you are getting ready to return a tennis ball, and you look the other way for just a minute. Something has distracted you, squirrel, and you don't see the ball go by you. That's an unforced error. Churches have unforced errors. They have things that they could have prevented had they not done it. They're things, I won't call them silly mistakes or even worse, stupid mistakes. I would just say these are things that church leaders need to be paying attention to because they happen more often than not. And what we have done is we've gone through a series of unforced errors. We got two podcasts this week. And in this particular podcast, we're going to be talking about another unforced error. And when we talk about this unforced error, I think many of you will identify right away. It's the failure to have digital giving. Now, that just goes right along with Cheney and how they help you keep your records and all those things that we just said. It's a perfect segue one to the other. But Sam Rayner and I were doing some forecasts back in during COVID. And one of the forecasts we had during 2020, we said, what's the church going to look like? Well, we got a lot of them right. We got a whole lot of them right. But we got two dead wrong. And they were both related to finances. The first one that we got dead wrong was that the churches are going to be strapped for cash because they're not going to be meeting. And therefore, people are not going to be putting in the plate. They're not going to be giving. And so as a result of that, we said churches have got to really cut back. We recommended that each church consider a 20% cutback in its budget just in case. Now, what happened? Well, two things happened that we did not prepare for. One of those things was the unprecedented introduction of liquidity into the market, which in simple terms mean a lot of people and a lot of organizations got a lot of cash from the government. And that caused giving to actually go up during the pandemic and even its subsequent year of 2021. And then the other thing that we just did not anticipate was how many churches increased their digital giving as a result of not being able to pass a plate or put up money in a box during an in-person worship service. Those two things caused us to be way off target about the finances of the church. Now, can you blame us? We didn't see trillions of dollars coming in through government handouts is not the word I'm looking for, but you know what I'm talking about. Government funds that were going to individuals, PPP, and then funds for families and for families with children. And the list goes on and on. The money just kept coming and kept coming. Now we have trillions in debt. That's another topic for another time, probably not on this podcast. But here's what we found out. Digital giving increases the church giving even well after the pandemic and the 2021 subsequent year of the pandemic. And so I want you to follow these points. I'll kind of give them in checklist fashion so that you can hear them well. Or if you're watching on YouTube, hey, give us a thumbs up over there, or subscribe to us, or tell people about us over on YouTube. And if you listen on your favorite podcasting app, give us a rating and review. We say that a lot because that's how we get the word out, quite frankly. And this is a free podcast to listeners and viewers, and we want to get the word out to everyone. Okay, so here's some points that I just want you to follow. And this is why you shouldn't have the unforced error of not having digital giving. Did you follow that double negative? The unforced error of not having digital giving, the arrow being one of the negatives, and then not being the other. So did you get that? If your church does not have digital giving, particularly allowing church members to have recurring giving, which means they just say we're going to give this much every week, every month, whatever the case may be, and it's on autopilot. This is huge for the church. This is huge for churches. And so if you're not doing digital giving, you are creating an unforced error. Well, let's look at some of these points. Digital giving has become one of the primary ways churches receive consistent, recurring donations. I mean, in some churches, like, I've told you before, Nellie Jo and I are part of two churches where two sons of pastors, one in Nashville area and the other one in Bradenton, Florida. And the one in Nashville area is a relatively new church, less than 10 years old, just started it. And that particular church has always had digital giving, but it even went higher during COVID. And I don't know what the numbers are, but I bet they're 90% digital giving. It's kind of a reflection of a younger church, a newer church. Sam's church, West Bradenton, been growing significantly and has been getting younger. So I haven't been keeping up with the numbers. But I know at one point they were like 20 or 30% digital giving, and then COVID came and they hit 50%. I know they're well past the 50% mark right now. Here's what we're saying. That is going to be, in many churches, it is the primary way churches give consistently. And it's recurring giving. I mean, it used to be you'd hope someone would show up so they'd put money in the plate, or in some cases, or in the box in the back of the service or worship center. Now, with recurring giving, it is on autopilot to some extent. And so the funds are coming in even when the people are not coming in, if they have so committed to do so. Here's the second point I want to make. Members who give digitally are often more regular in their generosity and less affected by seasonal attendance dips. So just think about it. Some people will say, "Oh, it's tax season. I got to pay my taxes, and so I'm not going to give as much to the church." Or some people are going to say, "It's tax season. I'm getting a refund. I'm going to give a little bit extra to the church." That would be one example of seasonality. Another example of seasonality is the Christmas season. Some will say, "I'm going to be more generous." Some will be saying, "If you saw all the Christmas gifts I have to buy, I'm not going to give less to the church." Members who give digitally, particularly when they have checked the box digitally of recurring giving, seasonal attendance dips, maybe the summer slump, churches don't feel that nearly as much when they have digital recurring giving. So that is my second point, and it's a big one. So the first point is one of the primary digital giving is one of the primary ways that churches give. My second point is this: members who give digitally, they're more regular in their giving patterns, especially if they've checked off recurring giving, which you're about to hear. I would concur with recurring giving being one of the big things, and I would encourage church leaders to remind their church members again and again about the opportunity to give, but not only to give digitally, but to give in a recurring fashion. So here's the third point. Many newer members are really unaware of the digital options they have to give. This is something that should be incumbent upon the church leadership to mention occasionally in announcements or whatever the best venue is. Certainly in new members classes to say these are the ways that you can give. And new members do not need to be ignorant about giving. They need to be cognizant about giving, and they need to be aware of the digital options. Quite frankly, in these days, more and more people like the digital option because we do digital in almost everything that we do. I mean, I used to write a number of checks a year, paper checks. I limit myself right now to one or two paper checks that I write on a regular basis simply because the recipient wants a paper check, not because I want to give them a paper check because I don't like them, but because the recipient wants a paper check. So now today, I give digitally every opportunity I can. You say, well, is it safe? It's just as safe as giving by paper check. Paper checks can get stolen. Paper checks can get mutilated. They can get lost in the mail. And there's certainly anything digitally has its risk, but it's minimal. And so newer members need to be aware of the digital options that are out there, and they need to be regularly highlighted and explained. I don't know what you would think as a church leader, pastor, church staff, church lay leader. I don't know what you would think would be your best venue for explaining giving, maybe during the time of thanking people for their gifts. I love the way my sons do it every single week. Instead of asking for money, they're thanking people for their generosity. But that gives them the opportunity to let people know of the options that are out there to give and how to give. And quite frankly, the expectation that you should give. All right, what else? Another point we want to make on this. Digital platforms not only increase convenience, but they increase sustained engagement with the church mission. I mean, you are getting people connected with the church. I mean, I often like to talk about a disciples path, or sometimes called a discipleship path. And churches are different in what that path is, but sometimes I've also called it an MVE, minimal viable expectation. And it's basically what's expected of you when you come into a church. You know, I'm a big proponent of high expectations. Wrote a book about that when high expectations weren't even cool. Wrote it in the 1990s. And what are the expectations of new members? Well, you expect them to attend worship, yes. To be in a group like Sunday school or small group, community group, life group, yes. You expect them to be involved in ministry, yes. You really would like to see them reaching evangelistically in the church? Yes. What else, though? You would like for them to give. Yeah, certainly you want them to support the ministry and mission of the church, but you know that they are not doing the work that God has called them to do unless they are giving. So if they give digitally, that is something where they are constantly connected to the church. One of the reasons, and this is kind of a side part here, one of the reasons I advocate frequent giving statements, and I would say maybe once a quarter. Some churches do it once a month, but I would do more than once a year, not only so people can have records of what they're giving, but it's a reminder to them of how they are engaged in the life and the ministry of the church. Digital platforms are incredibly convenient, but they also are an indication of sustained engagement with the church's mission. Now, let's just look at one of the negatives on this. One of the negatives on this is failure to promote digital giving can result in missed opportunities to develop faithful givers. But before I get into that, let me just pause on something. I have been really, really excited about one of our ministry partners, which is called Upward. And one of the reasons, or many reasons I'm excited about him is they've been around for quite a while. I think they started off in basketball, but now they have so many different opportunities to engage families in sports. And it's just something that is increasing across the country, across the world. And so we love the fact that we have a partnership called Upward. And Upward has just introduced this year Upward Running. And basically it's one of the more simpler ways to get involved, connect the community. They have the 5K challenge, and they give you everything you need to know how to do this 5K challenge. It's simple to start. Just get one passionate leader, and you don't need a facility. And you can sponsor a 5K, and it will connect your church with the community. So the reason I'm saying that is the more that you get your people involved, engaged in giving and in outreach and ministry to the community, the more they're going to be connected to the church, the more they're going to be connected to the community, the healthier they're going to be spiritually, and the healthier the church is going to be as well. So we've been looking at these digital giving mechanisms. Here, let me just give a negative on this, because we've been talking about unforced error. What happens if you fail to promote digital giving? You're going to have all kind of missed opportunities. Some people who don't give because they forget about it. People who don't give because it's not at the front of their mind. People who don't give because others have asked and have gotten them set up on digital giving, but you have not. This can truly be an unforced error. And so as we go through this unforced error series, I just want you to hear this again and again and again. Your church needs to have digital giving. Not only does it need to have it, it needs to promote it as well. And in promoting it, you will connect your people to the church more. You will see giving increase. We've seen it upwards of 25 to 30% when people started either introducing digital giving or emphasizing recurring giving. One of those two factors. We've seen some big increases. And so this is an opportunity for your church, your ministry, to connect with people better and to have a more dynamic ministry that is funded well to reach people in the community. Well, I've been enjoying this Unforced Errors series. It actually started when I started looking at how many churches do not have parking lot greeters. Isn't that something? But the missed opportunities that are there if you don't have someone meeting people out in the church parking lot when they come in. So that's just one that we've gone over. But this one is another one, and we're going to continue on the Unforced Errors series. And in the next episode, we release 2 episodes in a week. In the next episode, we're going to talk about the secret guest. And the unforced error is not having a secret guest. You probably know what a secret guest is, but I think we're going to have some pretty eye-opening things as we share with you what you're missing out on if you don't have a secret guest. Anyway, that's for the next episode. Thank you for being a part of the Church Answers podcast and listening to this episode. Always, thank you, Cheney and Associates. Look, I said at the beginning, please consider this as we're wrapping up this podcast. Set up an appointment with Cheney and Associates. Go to CheneyAssociates.com/church answers. They're the bookkeeping firm for the church. They're the accounting firm for the church. They're serving over 1,100 churches, and that's all they do. That is their ministry. That is their mission. That is their passion. We love having them as part of the partnership at Church Answers, and specifically at the Church Answers podcast. Well, I made it through one podcast without my younger son being the host and the voice that resonates rather than has the sound of age on it. And I made it through. He will hear about this in 2 more podcasts from now when he comes back, and he'll know what sacrifices I have made for him in this podcast, but for him, for all of his life. Now that my youngest son is 40 years old, I'll remind him that for a biblical generation, I have been there doing so much for him, and he has abandoned me while I do this podcast. But I survived, and I thank you, the listener. If you're listening on the podcasting app, give us a rating and review. And for you, the viewer, if you're watching us on YouTube, subscribe to us, say some good things about us, give us a thumbs up, and we will be so glad to bring other people as a result of your recommendation, a ministry that is free to them because of the generosity of people like Cheney and Associates and like Upward. Thank you again for being a part of the Church Answers podcast. We'll see you in the next episode on these things that we're calling unforced errors. It'll be fun. See you then.